All right, what is going on, Fight Family? It has been a minute since I have heard from you all. And as you all know, sometimes life happens. The last 2 weeks, I actually have not seen any fights. So I miss you all, and it is good to be back talking boxing. Today, I am doing something that I have actually been wanting to do for quite some time now, and that is start my rewind series. Now, what this series will be is I want to say that I started this channel around 2013, somewhere around there. So what this rewind series is going to be is going to be me going through fights of the past, anytime from it could be 120 years ago to up to 2013 when I started my channel, and going over some fights and breaking down some fights just like I do all these current fights, but fights in the past. I'll be doing some of my favorite fights, some of my favorite fighters fights, and then sometimes just some random fights. Like something may just pop in my head and I might say, you know what, let me find that guy or gal and do that fight and break that fight down. So the first one that I want to start with is the Bernard Hopkins Antonio Tarver fight. Now this fight took place June 10th, 2006 in Atlantic City. Bernard Hopkins did win this fight by unanimous decision. The judges scored the fight all three judges scored the fight 118-109. Basically, they gave Tarver 2 rounds. And this, if you all remember, was supposed to be Bernard Hopkins' farewell fight. This was supposed to be the one that he rolled off in the sunset on because he said that he promised his mother that he didn't want to fight past, it was either 40 or 41. I forget the exact age. But just to give you an idea of what happened up to this point, in 2004, Bernard Hopkins beat Oscar De La Hoya. Then after that, he fought Howard Eastman in 2005. And then in July of 2005, I'm right. In July of 2005, he fought Jermaine Taylor to be undisputed. He lost that fight by split decision. He comes back in December, fights Jermaine Taylor again. He loses that one by unanimous decision. So then he decided 6 months later that he would go up to light heavyweight. He jumped over super middle and went right for Antonio Tarver, the man who 2 years before this had beat Roy Jones and gave Roy Jones his official first loss. So, as I always do, let me get into my pros and my cons. Let me start with Antonio Tarver. The pros would be he accepted the challenge and he showed up for the fight. That's pretty much it. Sometimes I don't have a lot of pros for a fight. The cons would be he looked very lethargic. I don't know if it was because he had come off of filming Rocky Balboa, where he filmed that movie at about 220 pounds. And now he was coming down something like 45 pounds. Because I want to say that this was his very next fight after filming that movie. I don't know if it was just not his day that day. I don't know if it was Bernard Hopkins and his strategy, his come forward approach that took him out of his game. But Antonio Tarver did not look like himself in that game. His punches looked weak. He looked slow. So that would be the cons for Antonio Tarver. As for Bernard Hopkins, the pros would be he looked great at 175 pounds for a man who skipped super middle and went right to light heavy. He looked great. He looked quick. He had his game plan. He definitely worked his game plan, which was hit Tarver with 1 or 2 shots and then get in close and kind of lunge in, grip him a little bit. It wasn't over excessive holding, but to hold him just a little bit, hit him on the inside, counter him. As for the cons for Bernard Hopkins on this night, the only con I would say is that he didn't throw more shots. He was really throwing 1 shot at a time in a lot of the cases. There were times he threw a flurry. He might have threw 2 to 5 shots, shoe shined him a little bit, but that would be it for the cons. Let's talk about the fight a little bit. Fight went all 12 rounds, and pretty much it was all Bernard Hopkins the whole fight. As I mentioned, it was really Bernard Hopkins counter punching, in a way kind of beating Tarver at his own game. As I mentioned in the pros and cons, Bernard Hopkins, he used his jab. He would throw a shot and then he would lunge in, which is easy to do when you're a conventional fighter fighting a southpaw fighter, because your lead hand and his lead hand are pretty close, so you're close to that side of his body, which is what Hopkins was doing. He was really he did a good job in this fight of ducking, coming in, And he did a very good job he really threw a looping right hand, and that looping right hand seemed to find a home because he puffed up both of Tarver's eyes, as I mentioned. He did a good job with the hook. What he would do is he would throw the hook, catch Tarver up close in the eye. He would lunge in and then hit Tarver in his left eye with his right hand. In the fifth round, that probably was the most exciting round of the fight. He did catch Tarver with a counter right hand. What happened was Tarver threw an uppercut. Hopkins slipped it and then threw a hard right hand that landed right on the chin of Tarver. And it really was a balanced shot. Now, I know the referee counted it as a knockdown, and I believe the reason he did that was because they said that Tarver's glove touched the canvas. Now, if you look at, I actually rewatched the fight before I did this video. I haven't watched this fight probably since it happened. It wasn't a fight on my list of fights to rewatch, over and over. It looked like Tarver maybe didn't touch the canvas. He was off balance, but I think the ref looked at it and said, listen, his hand got close enough. I'm going to call it a knockdown. So Bernard Hopkins did get an official knockdown. I still believe that it was more of a flash, off balance shot, that he just caught Tarver with such a hard shot. He knocked him off balance. Pretty much the rest of the fight was all Bernard Hopkins. We get to the end. Bernard Hopkins is the winner, and he becomes if I'm not mistaken, the IBO light heavyweight champion, because I think Antonio Tarver was stripped of a couple of his titles for whatever reason or the other. I really don't remember 19 years ago what happened. All right, pretty much, fight fans, that was it. What did you guys think about this fight? Going all the way back to 2006, who did you pick to win this fight? And how do you rank this fight as far as Bernard Hopkins and his lore and his legacy? Do you put it up there as one of his top fights? I would say up there with Trinidad, which was a sad fight for me because, Trinidad was my favorite fighter. And what do you think about Antonio Tarver? Do you really believe that the weight loss is what really made him so lethargic? And can Antonio Tarver use that as an excuse? Because remember, when Roy went up in 2003 and fought John Ruiz, and he put on all of that muscle, and he came into that fight at 198 pounds of all muscle, and then he had to sweat all of that off to fight Tarver. Antonio Tarver and others did not want to hear Roy with any excuses. They said, listen, don't come with the excuses. You took the fight. We don't want to hear it. So does Antonio Tarver deserve any backlash for the weight loss excuse? Now, to be honest, Antonio Tarver wasn't screaming to the top of his lungs that, hey, I had to lose all of this weight, but there was quiet whispers between him and Buddy McGirt that Hopkins only picked him because he knew that Tarver was basically a heavyweight at the time and would have to lose a lot of weight to come down and fight Hopkins. Whatever your thoughts are, let me know what you thought about the fight. If you haven't already, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so we can keep talking boxing. That's all for this one. I hope you enjoyed my first edition of Rewind, and I'm looking to keep this up and do this more often and stay on more of the current fights. That's all for this one. Peace.